The air bites with a sharpness that feels ancient and pure. Here in the vast, untamed wilderness of Alaska, winter holds dominion. Snow lies in a thick, pristine blanket, muffling the world in a profound silence. Whisper of the wind through the spruce trees. For the next 3 days, this immense and challenging landscape will be my home. I have come here with a simple objective: to live in harmony with the environment, relying solely on skills and knowledge passed down through generations. This is not about conquering nature, but about understanding its rhythms and finding my place within them. Build a shelter from what the forest provides. Keep a fire burning for warmth and cooking. Truly experience the essence of Arctic survival. Travel as far as a vehicle could take me. Continue on foot. Pull my gear on a sledge. The sense of isolation grows with every step, the familiar world receding behind me. This deliberate separation is a crucial part of the experience. It strips away the distractions of modern life, forcing a heightened state of awareness. Every track in the snow, every change in the light, every subtle shift in the wind becomes a piece of vital information. The challenge is immense, but the reward is a connection to the natural world that is both humbling and deeply fulfilling. Choosing the right location for a camp is the most important decision one makes in a survival situation. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. I look for a spot that offers a combination of crucial resources. Firstly, it must be sheltered from the prevailing wind, which is the greatest thief of warmth. A dense stand of trees, the leeward side of a small hill, can provide a natural windbreak. Secondly, it needs to be in close proximity to a plentiful supply of dry, standing deadwood for fuel. Finally, I check for any potential hazards, such as widowmakers, dead branches overhead that could fall under the weight of snow or in a strong wind. I find a suitable area nestled within a thick grove of spruce trees. The snow is deep here, which is actually an advantage. Snow is a fantastic insulator, and it will form the walls of my shelter. Before I begin any construction, my next priority is to gather a substantial amount of firewood. One can never have too much. I search for standing dead trees, identifiable by their lack of needles and the dry, brittle feel of their branches. These are far superior to lying on the ground, which will be damp and difficult to burn efficiently. The sound of my saw cutting through the dry wood is a satisfying, rhythmic noise in the quiet forest. As I work, I notice the telltale signs of bark beetle infestation. These tiny insects have had a significant impact on the forests throughout this region. For my purposes, this means there is an abundance of standing deadwood available. I organize the wood into different sizes: small twigs for kindling, finger-thick branches for establishing the fire, and larger logs that will burn slowly and provide long-lasting coals. Building a shelter from scratch is a deeply rewarding process. It is a direct conversation with the landscape. My design will be a simple lean-to, but one that is heavily reinforced against the cold. The first step is to establish the main structural element, a strong ridgepole. I find a long, sturdy dead spruce pole and lash it horizontally between two strong trees, about chest high. The placement is crucial, ensuring the back of the shelter faces the wind, deflecting its chilling force away from the living space. The knots I use are simple but effective, learned and practiced over many years until they become second nature. With the ridgepole secure, I begin laying other long poles against it, angled down to the ground. I place them close together, creating a solid framework for the roof and back wall. Each pole must be seated securely in the snow and against the ridgepole to create a strong, stable structure. The goal is to form a tight, gap-free wall that will support the weight of the insulating snow and block any drafts. I use the natural materials at hand, weaving smaller, flexible spruce boughs between the main poles to create an even tighter matrix, a bit like weaving a giant basket. Now comes the most important part for insulation: piling snow onto the structure. Snow, with its trapped air pockets, is a remarkably effective insulator. I build the walls up to be several feet thick. The entrance is left open, facing where the fire will be built. This design allows radiant heat from the fire to warm the interior of the shelter directly. The final touch for comfort and insulation is the bed. I gather a very thick layer of spruce boughs, at least a foot deep when compressed, and lay them on the floor of the shelter. These boughs serve two purposes. They insulate me from the cold ground, and they also provide a surprisingly comfortable and fragrant mattress. I have taken simple materials from the forest, wood, boughs, snow, and crafted a functional and effective shelter. It is a testament to the fact that nature provides everything we need, if only we have the knowledge to use it. With the shelter complete, my focus shifts to the fire. In the Arctic winter, fire is life. It is warmth. It is a means to cook. It is a way to purify water. It is a powerful psychological comfort against the encroaching darkness and cold. I build the fire pit a few feet from the entrance of my lean-to. I create a long log fire, laying two large, water-soaked green logs parallel to the opening. Between them, I build a platform of dry sticks. I strike a ferrocerium rod. Sparks land on a tinder bundle of birch bark. Birch bark catches sparks even when damp. The tinder bursts into flame. I add small, dry twigs. I gradually increase the size of the wood until a sustainable fire is established. Managing the fire is a continuous task. I keep a good bed of coals for cooking. My first meal is a simple but deeply satisfying one, moose fajitas. I cook it directly on a metal griddle placed over the hot coals. The sound of the meat sizzling is welcome, the aroma mixing with the scent of wood smoke and spruce. I use it to dry my socks and gloves, carefully placing them on a rack of sticks. I melt snow in a pot for drinking water, another essential task. As night falls completely, the fire becomes the center of my small universe, my shield against the immense cold of the Alaskan night. Settling in for the first night is a moment of truth. Inside my spruce ball cocoon, it is remarkably comfortable. I wake periodically through the night to tend the fire. A few well-chosen logs keep the coals glowing, the firelight dancing on the snow, the dark shapes of the spruce trees against a star-dusted sky. Morning breaks with soft hues of pink and orange. I take stock of the shelter. It has performed admirably. Before starting the day, I add more snow to the walls and coax the fire back to life from glowing embers. A pot of water goes on for oatmeal. A hot meal replenishes energy and raises core temperature. The first night has been a success. One of the great joys of bushcraft is not just using tools, but making them. Today, I have a special project, crafting a small griddle for cooking. The first step is to get the fire incredibly hot, building up a large bed of hardwood coals. I place the steel plate directly into the heart of the coals, using long-handled tongues to manipulate the metal. The goal is to heat the steel until it glows a bright cherry red. At this temperature, the metal becomes malleable. Working quickly, I turn up the edges slightly, creating a shallow lip around the griddle. I repeat this process of heating and hammering several times until I am satisfied with the shape. While it is still hot, I rub it with a piece of fat. The fat smokes and polymerizes, creating a natural, non-stick coating. The result is a simple, rustic, but incredibly functional cooking tool. For lunch, I prepare a hearty meal of corned beef hash. Corned beef, potatoes, onions, spread across the hot griddle. The griddle performs beautifully, cooking the hash evenly to a perfect golden brown. There is something profoundly satisfying about eating well in the wilderness. A good, hot meal can lift the spirits. For my final evening meal, I have a special treat, king crab legs. I place them on the griddle over the coals to heat through. The sweet, delicate flavor of the crab is a luxurious contrast to the rugged surroundings. Here, the entire process is part of the experience. Gathering the wood, building the fire, forging the griddle, cooking the food. In this moment, I have everything I need. The second night in the shelter is even more comfortable than the first. Waking on the final morning, I am greeted by a light snowfall. The landscape feels renewed, clean, and impossibly beautiful. As I prepare a final simple breakfast, the experience has been a constant process of problem-solving and adaptation. Breaking down the camp is bittersweet. I dismantle the shelter, spread the poles, and ensure the fire is completely extinguished. As I shoulder my pack and begin the journey back, I carry more than just my gear. The silence of the forest, the warmth of the fire, and a renewed sense of my own capabilities. This journey into the Alaskan winter was more than just a camping trip. It was an immersion in the principles of bushcraft. It strips away the non-essentials and focuses the mind on what truly matters: warmth, water, food, shelter. I hope that sharing this story inspires others to take their own first steps in learning outdoor skills. Bushcraft is accessible to everyone. Ultimately, bushcraft teaches us respect for nature, for resources, and for the knowledge of those who came before. The enduring spirit of bushcraft is one of resilience, resourcefulness, and a deep, abiding love for the wild places of this world.